The afternoon sun streamed through the gauze curtains, casting long shadows across the living room where Eleanor lay sprawled upon the burgundy velvet couch. Her fingers traced lazy patterns in the air as she spoke, her voice haunted with false concern. "Deceive me, mother. Your treats won't budge me," Marcus declared from the doorway, his 16-year-old frame rigid with determination. The words hung in the air like a challenge thrown down between medieval knights. In this flask, nothing but lies. In these words, emptiness. Eleanor's laugh was crystalline and cold. She had raised him, fed him, clothed him, and now he stood before her like some rebellious prince rejecting the crown. The irony wasn't lost on her. She who had sacrificed everything for his ungrateful existence now found herself cast as a villain in his adolescent drama. "Oh, my darling boy," she purred, not bothering to lift her head from the cushions. Such grand word from such a small mouth. Do you think your poetry makes you wise? Do you think your defiance makes you strong? Marcus's hands clenched into fists at his sides. For weeks he had endured her manipulation, her casual cruelties disguised as maternal love, the way she would promise him freedom and then find reasons to keep him tethered to her side, the way she would speak of his future while ensuring he had none. The flask in his hand contained the remnants of her latest offering, a protein shake laced with sedatives, discovered only because he had grown suspicious of a sudden generosity. "I will abide the highest cliffs," he continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. "I brave, I climb, while you in my couch all day lie, pretending that you own me to your heart's desire." The couch had become her throne and her prison both. From its plush embrace, Eleanor orchestrated the small kingdom of her home with the precision of a chess master, every move calculated, every gesture designed to maintain control. She had convinced herself that this was love, this suffocating web of dependency she had woven around her son. But Marcus had begun to see through the silk threads to the steel beneath. "My will is a fortress," Marcus declared, stepping further into the room. "Resolve stalwart. Yours? Just of foolish, farce of unwise betrayal, treachery. I say history will mourn this darkest of days." Eleanor finally sat up, her carefully styled auburn hair catching the light. At 42, she was still beautiful in the way that broken things sometimes are, all sharp edges and dangerous curves. Her green eyes, so like his own, narrowed with the first hint of genuine concern. The boy was supposed to be malleable, compliant. This rebellion was unexpected. History! She laughed, but there was an edge to it now. "Darling, you are 16. Your history consists of homework assignments and video games. Don't speak to me of darkness when you've never seen the sun." "I've seen enough," Marcus replied. "I've seen how you lied to Mrs. Henderson about why I can't come to her son's birthday party. I've seen how you intercept my mail from colleges. I've seen how you schedule my doctor's appointments when you know I can't protest, filling prescriptions for medications I don't need." The accusation hung between them like a blade. Eleanor's perfectly manicured fingers tightened on the arm of the couch. She had been so careful, so subtle. How had he noticed? When had her sweet, dependent boy become this adversary? "You're being dramatic," she said, but her voice had lost its honeyed quality. "Everything I do is for your protection. The world is cruel, Marcus. I've sheltered you from that cruelty." "You've sheltered me from life itself," he shot back, "but no more." Marcus moved to the window, gazing out at the street where other teenagers walked freely, unencumbered by the invisible chains that had bound him for so long. The irony was exquisite. From the outside, they appeared to be the perfect family. Eleanor, the devoted single mother who had sacrificed her career to raise a son. Marcus, the quiet, studious boy who never caused trouble. No one saw the control that masqueraded as care. No one witnessed the emotional manipulation that passed for maternal love. No one knew about the sleeping pills ground into his evening meals when he showed signs of independence, or the way she would manufacture crises to keep him close when he tried to spread his wings. "You dare call me Bad Kitty?" Marcus said suddenly, turning back to face her. The childhood nickname fell from his lips like a curse. "You say to no earthly creature those words must be laid." Off the table, presumptuous parley from one's own house won't shame me away. Eleanor flinched. The pet name had been their secret, something sweet and intimate from his younger days when he would curl up beside her on this very couch, purring with contentment as she stroked his hair. Now it sounded obscene in his mouth, twisted into something accusatory and bitter. "I never meant," she began, but he cut her off. "For this single moment, I'll cede you my place, for I am magnanimous, an effort I praise. But do not forget, remember your place." The words were a reversal so complete, so unexpected, that Eleanor felt the room spin around her. He was taking control, claiming the authority that had always been hers. The child was becoming the parent, and she was being relegated to the role of the wayward offspring in need of discipline. Marcus walked to the hallway that led to the bedrooms, his movements deliberate and purposeful. Each step was a declaration of independence, a rejection of the careful boundaries she had established over the years. For so long, her bedroom had been the sanctum sanctorum of their strange household, the place where she retreated to plan her next manipulation, to craft the next strategy for keeping him close. "In my bed, you'll find no rest for today," he announced, his voice carrying authority that made Eleanor's blood run cold. "Just so you don't argue, no formality in place. The mattress I'll mark with my abundant waist." The threat was crude, juvenile, and absolutely devastating in its symbolism. He was claiming territory, asserting dominance in the most primal way possible. The bed, that most intimate of spaces, would become his to defile, his to control. It was an act of rebellion so profound that Eleanor felt something crack deep inside her chest. "You wouldn't dare," she whispered. But even as she said it, she knew he would. This wasn't the compliant boy she had shaped and molded. This was something new, something fierce and uncontrollable. "Try me," Marcus replied simply. Eleanor rose from the couch on unsteady legs, the full weight of her situation finally crashing down upon her. For 16 years, she had been the architect of this relationship, the puppet master pulling the strings. She had convinced herself that her control was benevolent, that her manipulation was motivated by love. She had told herself that the world was too dangerous, too cruel for her precious boy, and that only she could protect him. But standing there in the dying afternoon light, watching her son's green eyes blaze with newfound independence, she finally saw the truth. She had not been protecting him from the world. She had been protecting herself from the terror of being alone. The thought of him growing up, moving away, building a life that didn't revolve around her had been so unbearable that she had tried to stop time itself. "Marcus," she said, and for the first time in years, her voice held no manipulation, no calculated emotion. It was just the sound of a woman who had lost everything. "Please." But it was too late for please. It was too late for bargaining or negotiation or the subtle emotional warfare she had employed for so long. The fortress of his will had indeed proven impregnable, and her siege had finally been broken. Marcus looked at her with something that might have been pity if there had been more compassion in his young heart. But she had taught him too well the art of emotional distance, the necessity of protecting oneself from those who claim to love you. "I'll be 18 in 2 years," he said quietly. "Until then, we can coexist. But the terms have changed. Mother, I am no longer your captive audience." In the days that followed, the household settled into an uneasy détente. Eleanor continued her routines, her morning coffee, her afternoon soaps, her evening wine, but the couch no longer felt like a throne. It felt like what it had always been, a piece of furniture in a house that no longer belonged to her alone. Marcus attended school, did his homework, performed the basic functions of a teenage son. But there was a distance now, a careful space he maintained that she could not cross. The invisible wall she had built to keep the world out now kept her isolated in the prison of her own making. She tried, in small ways, to reassert control. She scheduled a dentist appointment without consulting him. He rescheduled it himself. She planned a family vacation. He informed her he would be working that summer. She attempted to engage him in that old pattern of emotional manipulation. He simply walked away. She began to see a therapist, not because Marcus suggested it, but because the silence in the house had become unbearable. Dr. Patricia Winters was a kind woman in her 50s who listened without judgment as Eleanor unraveled the careful mythology she had built around her relationship with her son. "I loved him," Eleanor would say, session after session. "Everything I did was because I loved him." "Love," Dr. Winters would reply gently, "doesn't require possession. Love doesn't fear independence. Love celebrates growth, even when that growth means letting go." Spring arrived with its usual fanfare of blooming flowers and longer days. Marcus had indeed climbed to the highest cliffs of his determination, and from that vantage point he could see possibilities that had been hidden from him for years. College acceptance letters began to arrive, scholarships, grants, opportunity for a future that she had no part in planning. Eleanor watched from her couch as he sorted through his options with the careful consideration of someone who understood that choices have consequences. He was methodical, responsible, mature in ways that both thrilled and terrified her. This was the boy she had raised, but also the man she had tried to prevent him from becoming. "Where will you go?" she asked one evening as he sat at the kitchen table surrounded by brochures and forms. The flask incident became their unspoken treaty. They both knew what it represented. The line she had crossed, the trust she had broken, the moment when her maternal love had revealed itself to be something darker and more selfish. Neither spoke of it again, but it hung between them like a sword, a reminder of the boundaries that now existed in their relationship. Marcus began to plan for his future with a methodical precision she had once admired in herself. College applications appeared on his desk, scholarship essays were written, plans were made. She was not consulted, not included, not given the veto power she had once wielded so casually. As winter gave way to spring, Eleanor found herself confronting the emptiness she had so long avoided. The house felt larger somehow, echoing with the silence of a relationship that had died but not yet been buried. She had won so many battles over the years, convinced him to stay home from parties, persuaded him to drop extracurricular activities, manipulated him into dependency, but she had lost a war. The victory he had claimed that afternoon by the couch was not cruel or vindictive. It was simply final. He had declared his independence not with violence or harsh words, but with the quiet certainty of someone who had finally recognized their own worth. The fortress of his will had indeed proven stalwart, and her siege had crumbled not from external attack, but from internal recognition that it had been built on lies. "California," he said without looking up. "Berkeley, full scholarship. California, the other side of the continent. As far away as he could possibly go while still remaining in the same country. The geography of his choice was not lost on either of them. "That's wonderful," she managed, and was surprised to find that part of her meant it. The maternal instinct that had been so twisted and corrupted over the years still contained, somewhere deep within it, a genuine desire for his happiness and success. As graduation approached, Marcus made good on his promise of magnanimity. He included her in the planning, asked her opinion on his cap and gown, even requested that she attend the ceremony. It was not the desperate inclusion of a dependent child seeking approval, but the generous gesture of a young man who had the confidence to be gracious to those who had wronged him. "I want you to be proud of me," he said one afternoon, and the words hit her like a physical blow. She had always been proud and terrified and desperate to keep him close enough that her pride wouldn't have to be shared with a world that didn't revolve around her needs. "I am proud of you," she replied, and meant it more than she had meant anything in years. "I've always been proud of you. I didn't know how to show it without trying to own it." It was perhaps the most honest thing she had ever said to him, and he received it with the same quiet dignity he had shown throughout their strange, painful evolution. Graduation day dawned bright and clear, and Eleanor sat in the audience watching her son accept his diploma with the same mixture of pride and grief that parents have felt since the beginning of time. But her grief was complicated by the knowledge that she had tried to prevent this very moment, had worked actively to keep him from reaching this milestone of independence. At the graduation party later that evening, she watched him interact with his classmates and realized how much he had cost him over the years. The friendships he might have had, the experiences he had missed, the normal teenage rebellion that had been replaced by something far more complex and damaging. Her protection had been prison, her love had been possession, and her greatest fear, losing him, had become a self-fulfilling prophecy. But as she watched him laugh with his friends, saw the easy confidence with which he moved through the world, she also understood that he had survived her. Not just survived, but transcended. The fortress of his will had protected not just his independence, but his essential self. Despite everything she had done, he had become exactly who he was meant to be. The house felt impossibly large after he left for California. Eleanor found herself sitting on the couch. Their couch, the battlefield where their war had finally ended, and marveling at the silence. It was not the companionable quiet of shared space, but the hollow echo of a life that had been built around another person who was no longer there. She began, slowly and painfully, to construct a new existence. The therapist sessions continued. She took a part-time job at a local library. She joined a book club, made tentative friendships with women her own age who had also navigated the treacherous waters of motherhood and survived to tell the tale. Marcus called every Sunday, dutiful and kind but distant. He told her about his classes, his roommate, the girl he had started dating. She listened and responded and tried to be the mother she should have been all along, supportive without being suffocating, interested without being invasive. "I'm proud of you," she told him during one of these calls, months after he had left. "For what?" he asked. "For becoming who you are despite me, not because of me. For having the courage to declare your independence when I was too selfish to grant it freely. For building that fortress of will and defending it even when I tried to tear it down." There was silence on the other end of the line, and for a moment she feared she had said too much, pushed too hard into territory that should remain unexplored. But then he spoke, and his voice was gentle. "I love you, Mom. I always have. I needed to love you from a distance until I learned how to love myself first." It was forgiveness and condemnation wrapped in the same sentence, and Eleanor accepted both with a grace she had never shown him when their positions had been reversed. The darkest days of their relationship were behind them now, but the echoes would remain, a reminder of the price of love without boundaries, protection without freedom, and the terrible damage that could be done in the name of caring. The couch remained in its place by the window, but Eleanor no longer spent her days there. She had learned, finally and at great cost, that thrones were poor substitute for homes, and that the greatest love was often the one that learned to let go. The fortress of will that Marcus had built to protect himself from her had, in the end, protected them both from the woman she might have continued to become if he had not found the courage to say no.